Murray Springs. Deep within the sun-baked Arizona desert, researchers carefully brushed dust away from something extraordinary. They were originally just mapping the ancient hunting paths of early Americans. Excavators completely expected to find the usual signatures. They looked for broken spears, scattered bones, and the slow fading of nomadic tribes. But as they dug deeper into the earth, their brushes hit a sinister black layer. What they found trapped beneath that dark shroud stopped everyone. This was not a gradual extinction. It was the sudden scar of an incomprehensible nightmare. What exactly triggered this nightmare? The truth is still buried in the dust of time, waiting for those curious enough to look. If you share this thirst for the unknown and want to uncover the ancient mysteries and hidden archaeology, please leave a like, share this story, and subscribe to Echo Mysteries. Your support and your comments are vital energy. Walk with us into the shadows of the past, and let's bring these forgotten secrets back to the light. Picture the American Southwest, but completely strip away the arid, sun-baked deserts you know today. Rewind the clock 13 millennia. You are standing in what is now Arizona, but the prehistoric landscape is a lush, vibrant ecosystem dominated by giants. Columbian mammoths, towering beasts with massive tusks that could effortlessly sweep the earth, thundered across the open plains of North America. Stalking them silently in the shadows were the Clovis people, the absolute apex predators of their time. They were indigenous survivalists armed with masterfully crafted stone weapons, the iconic fluted points designed specifically to pierce thick hides. For decades, the standard historical narrative painted a comforting picture of gradual decline, a slow fading of these nomadic tribes. As the climate shifted and their massive prey naturally dwindled over millennia. When modern researchers first arrived at Murray Springs to meticulously dig through the ancient dirt, they fully expected to find the unremarkable remnants of this dynamic. They anticipated the usual scattered bones, the chipped stones of a temporary hunting camp, the predictable evidence of daily human survival. As the excavation trenches were initially opened, the team painstakingly scraped away the pale sediment, cataloging what appeared to be a perfectly normal prehistoric kill site. They uncovered the heavy, unmistakable depressions of mammoth footprints deeply preserved in the ancient mud. They found the intricate stone spears of the human hunters lying nearby. Everything seemed to align perfectly with the conventional narrative of a successful, everyday hunt in the unforgiving prehistoric wilderness. The story was supposed to be simple and historically safe, but as the archaeologists continued to clear the dirt, the comforting illusions of that standard narrative began to violently fracture. The artifacts and bones were not resting in the expected chaotic scatter of a finished meal or a carefully dismantled camp. Instead, the scene felt eerily frozen, brutally interrupted mid-breath. The massive mammoth footprints did not wander off into the distance, or show the signs of a beast slowly succumbing to a natural death. The Clovis hunting tools were not worn out, broken, or casually discarded by a moving tribe heading to their next destination. They were simply dropped, pristine, highly lethal weapons, the kind that took immense skill and precious resources to create, were abandoned directly in the dirt right alongside the tracks of their massive prey. An elite hunter does not just drop their only means of survival and walk away empty-handed into the dangerous wilderness. What could possibly make the apex predators of North America abandon their weapons and vanish? The skeletons of the megafauna were scattered in a bizarre, unnatural configuration that entirely defied the logic of a human butchering site or a natural animal graveyard. It looked exactly like a macabre photograph snapped at the precise millisecond the lights went out on an entire ecosystem. There was no slow transition. There was no gradual climate shift moving steadily through the animal population over centuries. The human hunters and the hunted beasts were locked together in a sudden, cataclysmic halt. The excavators stared down into the trench as the terrifying realization washed over them in the suffocating desert heat. They were no longer working on a routine historical site. They were standing directly in the middle of an ancient, apocalyptic crime scene. Now listen carefully, because here is where the excavation at Murray Springs turns from a fascinating anthropological anomaly into a deeply unsettling global mystery. The true horror was not what the researchers found scattered in the Arizona dirt, but what was resting heavily, directly on top of it. As the archaeologists' delicate brushes swept away the final millimeters of pale sediment covering the abandoned spears and footprints, they hit a stark, undeniable boundary. A solid, visually jarring layer of earth abruptly choked off the excavation line. It was a sinister black mat of organic soil stretching across the trench. Below this dark, suffocating shroud, the ground was filled with the vibrant, chaotic evidence of the Clovis culture and the majestic Columbian mammoths. Above it, there was absolutely nothing. The black mat acted as an impenetrable geological curtain, sealing the vibrant era of the American giants forever. No Clovis tools ever appeared above this stark line. No mammoth bones ever crossed this dark, strictly defined threshold. It was an absolute, merciless boundary that visually signaled the instantaneous obliteration of the North American megafauna. The entire landscape had been seared and silenced in a single, devastating moment, buried beneath a dark veil that refused to give up its secrets. If this dark, suffocating boundary had only been uncovered in the sun-baked trenches of Murray Springs, the scientific community would have comfortably written it off. A terrible, extended drought, a catastrophic flash flood, perhaps a massive canyon fire that unfortunately trapped a specific herd of mammoths and a few unlucky human hunters. That was the initial, safe assumption, but then data poured in from across the map, and the illusion of a local anomaly completely shattered. Researchers digging in fundamentally different environments across the United States started hitting the exact same sinister anomaly. Imagine being an archaeologist in the humid Carolinas, and your trowel suddenly scrapes against that same unmistakable dark layer. In the rolling, grassy plains of Texas, buried deep beneath sprawling modern ranches, it was undeniably there, up near the freezing borders of the Great Lakes, and stretching relentlessly all the way into the vast eastern Canadian forests. Excavations were abruptly halted by this identical geological curtain. This was not a localized weather event. This was a continental shroud. The black mat, documented rigorously in landmark academic papers around 2008, was a distinct, carbon-rich layer of sedimentary death, found draped across more than 50 separate Clovis archaeological sites in North America. It blanketed the continent with a terrifying, inexplicable uniformity. The scientific establishment desperately tried to apply standard logic to the phenomenon. They attempted to force this massive geological scar into the neat, predictable boxes of gradual earthly changes. Experts vehemently argued for massive, continent-wide wildfires sparked by shifting climates. At the turbulent end of the Pleistocene epoch, they searched for evidence of overwhelming, apocalyptic floods unleashed as ancient glacial dams suddenly broke apart, but standard terrestrial logic completely collapsed when they examined the brutal, binary nature of the soil profile. A normal forest fire, even a massive one, leaves survivors. It leaves unburnt pockets of life. It leaves a recovering ecosystem that eventually deposits younger, newer bones on top of the ash. But the black mat did not operate like a normal disaster. Below the dark earth, the ground is teeming with the vibrant, chaotic evidence of a thriving megafauna ecosystem. It is rich with heavy bones of giant sloths, saber-toothed cat skulls, and intricate stone blades of the Clovis people. It is a dominant, breathing world, but the moment you look above that thin, dark line, silence, there is no biological trace of the ice age existing in the earth layer above. Not a single mammoth tusk ever penetrates the top of the mat. Not a single Clovis spear point is ever found resting securely on its upper surface. The transition is not gradual. It is an absolute, merciless severing of the historical timeline. A standard wildfire simply does not render an entire continent completely devoid of its apex predators in a geological instant. A glacial flood does not leave a uniform, carbon-rich burn scar, stretching from the desert southwest to the Atlantic coast. The sheer scale and finality of the obliteration defied every known model. Geologists were staring directly at a physical impossibility: to create a uniform layer of carbon, soot, and ash across millions of square miles of the North American continent simultaneously. You would need an event of apocalyptic proportions. You would need a mechanism of destruction capable of unleashing incomprehensible heat and pressure over vastly different topographies. The Earth itself simply did not possess the internal mechanisms to spontaneously generate a cataclysm of this specific nature, without leaving massive, smoking volcanic craters, which were entirely absent from the geological record of that exact era. The conventional theories were not just inadequate, they were completely broken. The dirt was broadcasting a story of annihilation. The experts had meticulously exhausted every logical explanation found on the surface of our planet. But the story deepens, because the real secret behind the black mat was never going to be found by looking at empty landscapes. The true nature of this cataclysmic event was hiding in plain sight. To understand what vaporized the ancient giants, the scientists had to stop looking at the vast horizon. They had to look through a microscope. When geologists finally took samples of that sinister black earth and placed them under high-powered electron microscopes, the mundane illusion of a simple prehistoric wildfire was instantly shattered. They were not just looking at compressed ash. Embedded deep within the carbon matrix of the black mat, they found a terrifying cocktail of cosmic impact markers. They discovered millions of microscopic magnetic spherules, tiny droplets of iron that had been violently melted and cooled. Even more disturbing, they found grains of shocked quartz. To understand shocked quartz, you abandon normal earthly physics. You cannot shock quartz with a massive forest fire. You cannot shock it with a localized volcanic eruption. It requires a concussive wave of pressure so unimaginably violent that it deforms the permanent crystalline structure of mineral. It requires the kind of brute, cataclysmic force typically only found at ground zero of a nuclear detonation. But the microscopes revealed something even more impossible hiding in the dirt. Sprinkled across the entire North American continent, locked entirely within that thin boundary layer, were millions of nanodiamonds. Specifically, researchers found a rare, hexagonal diamond structure. How do you forge a diamond in the open air? You need heat, not normal heat, impossible heat. The creation of these microscopic impact markers requires temperatures exceeding 3000 degrees Fahrenheit, combined with atmospheric shock pressures that defy earthly explanation. The bedrock of the continent was literally being subjected to conditions that would instantly vaporize solid steel. So what could possibly generate heat like this? The scientific consensus points to a singular, terrifying answer. The Earth did not suddenly boil from the inside out. The obliteration came from above. According to the landmark studies originally published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the culprit was not a slow climatic shift, but a cosmic firing squad. This is the younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Picture the ancient North American continent, dominated in the north by the massive Laurentide ice sheet, a towering, 2-mile-high fortress of solid glacial ice. Now, imagine the sky above it suddenly tearing open. The hypothesis suggests a fragmented comet, or a massive asteroid plunged into the Earth's atmosphere, but it did not strike the ground to leave a massive, singular crater. It detonated mid-air. This is known as a cosmic airburst. It is an atmospheric explosion of incomprehensible magnitude, turning the fragmented space rock into a cluster of temporary, blindingly hot miniature suns directly above. The atmospheric shock wave raced downward at supersonic speeds. In a fraction of a second, the intense thermal radiation struck the Earth. The surface of the North American landscape was literally vitrified. The immense heat instantly melted the top layer of the ground, turning sand and rock into liquid glass before the concussive wave pulverized it. The consequences of this aerial bombardment were apocalyptic. The towering Laurentide ice sheet faced the brunt of this cosmic blowtorch. Massive sections of the 2-mile-high glacial wall were instantly flash-melted, sending unimaginable torrents of freezing freshwater violently surging into the world's oceans, changing the global climate forever in a catastrophic flood of epic proportions. This sudden influx of icy water abruptly shut down the critical oceanic conveyor belts, plunging the entire northern hemisphere back into a brutal, 1,000-year deep freeze known as the Younger Dryas period. Simultaneously, the thermal flash ignited hemisphere-wide wildfires, burning the continent to the ground and blanketing the atmosphere in a choking, sun-blocking shroud of toxic smoke. The black mat was simply the settling ash of this burning world. The sheer scale of the environmental devastation is almost too massive to fully comprehend, but the physical destruction of the rocks and the ice is only half of the nightmare, because the most chilling evidence of this cataclysm wasn't found under a microscope. What happened next to the flesh and blood wandering the plains below will haunt the scientific community forever. When the deafening, earth-shattering roar of the atmospheric shockwave finally subsided, and the continent-spanning wildfires slowly burned themselves out into choking, smoldering embers, a profound and unnatural silence descended upon the North American landscape. Let us return one last time to the dusty, sun-baked excavation trenches of Murray Springs. We are no longer looking at an active prehistoric hunting ground or a vibrant, breathing savanna. We are staring directly into a mass grave that was permanently sealed by the heavens. The dark, carbon-rich shroud that steadily settled over the scorched earth did not just bury the physical landscape, it definitively buried an entire biological epoch. The sheer, incomprehensible scale of the devastation left behind a quietness that is almost impossible for the modern mind to fully grasp. The skies above the United States, previously filled with the thunderous sounds of a thriving, dynamic ecosystem, were now heavily choked with toxic soot and the bitter, unforgiving cold of the sudden Younger Dryas freeze. The earth was instantly transformed into a scorched, barren wasteland, entirely unrecognizable from the lush, green hunting grounds that existed just 24 hours earlier. Beneath that merciless black boundary lies the tragic, finalized ledger of the American giants. For millions of years, the North American continent had been a sprawling kingdom ruled exclusively by spectacular, towering megafauna. The Columbian mammoth, a majestic biological titan weighing over 10 tons with curved tusks the size of modern cars, had walked these specific plains with absolute, unchallenged dominance. The giant ground sloth, a heavily armored, formidable creature that could easily reach into the upper canopies of ancient trees, had slowly lumbered through the prehistoric forests. They were biological marvels, deeply entrenched in the ecosystem and perfectly adapted to their environment. Yet, their immense size, their incredibly thick hides, and their millions of years of evolutionary supremacy offered zero protection against a cosmic flash. Their extinction was not a slow, melancholic decline brought on by shifting seasonal weather patterns over thousands of years. It was a brutal, instantaneous eviction from the face of the planet. The fossil record buried in the dirt does not show a gradual thinning of their massive herds. It displays a sudden, catastrophic wall of absolute death. And then there were the human beings who walked beside them. The Clovis people were the ultimate apex predators. The brilliant, fiercely adaptable indigenous survivors who had successfully navigated the harshest conditions of the late Ice Age. They were the undisputed masters of the American wilderness, possessing an intimate understanding of the land and its inhabitants. But the apocalyptic airburst detonating high above the ice sheet did not discriminate between the hunted and the hunters. According to landmark studies published by the National Academy of Sciences and rigorous archaeological research from various institutions, the historical timeline of these remarkable people simply snaps in half. The scientific data pulled from the dirt is unequivocal. The intricately crafted stone tools, the lethal fluted spear points, The scattered campfire remains, and the shattered megafauna bones, are exclusively found directly beneath the black mat. They never, ever appear in the sedimentary layers above it. The boundary is an absolute, uncompromising line drawn deep in the geological sand. No Columbian mammoth ever took a step above that dark layer. No Clovis hunter ever chipped another deadly stone weapon on top of that falling soot. An entire vibrant, complex world was fundamentally erased in a single geological heartbeat. The rich biological landscape of the United States was wiped completely clean, effectively reset to a desolate, frozen zero. The majestic, towering creatures that defined the ancient continent were permanently relegated to the underworld. Locked beneath vaporized stone, beneath a microscopic rain of cosmic diamonds, the few human survivors stepped into a newly hostile, peripheral nightmare. They entered a freezing world completely devoid of the massive prey that had sustained their ancestors for generations. The sprawling slate of North America was wiped horrifyingly blank by an unfathomable power raining down from stars. But what happened on that terrible day 12,900 years ago is not just a story. Because the most chilling aspect of the younger Dryas impact is not what it did to the past. It is what it quietly suggests about the world we live in right now.